My name is Elena Vasquez. I was 30 years old when I learned that a family can disown you emotionally long before they ever stop calling you their daughter. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, the kind that looks harmless in memory. Warm light, clean house, too much food, too many people pretending not to notice what was happening. My parents' house in Evanston had always been immaculate when company came over. No clutter, no fingerprints on the stainless steel fridge, no emotional mess visible on the surface. That day was no different. The occasion was my father's retirement party. 40 years at the same accounting firm. Loyal, predictable, celebrated. 3 weeks earlier, my mother had called me. "Elena, sweetheart," she'd said, her voice already wrapped in excitement. "We're throwing a little celebration for your dad. Sunday, 3 o'clock. "That sounds nice," I said. "Do you want me to bring anything?" No, she replied quickly. "Just yourself. Oh, and your sister is flying in." Of course she was. My younger sister, Maribel, always arrived like an event. She flew in from Boston that morning, swept into the house with perfect hair and designer luggage, and immediately became the gravitational center of every conversation. She wore confidence the way some people wear perfume. Too much, but impossible to ignore. I stood near the fireplace, holding a glass of wine I hadn't tasted. "And then the investors basically begged us to take their money," Maribel said, laughing lightly, as if success was something that kept accidentally happening to her. "We're projecting 8 figures by year 3. Aunts and uncles leaned in, nodding, impressed. I forced a smile. My aunt noticed me hovering. "Elena, come here. Maribel was just telling us about her startup." I stepped forward. "Congratulations," I said. "That's huge." Maribel glanced at me briefly. "Thanks. You're still doing marketing, right?" I didn't miss the way she phrased it. "I'm a senior marketing director," I said evenly. "I was promoted last month." She smiled thinly. "Cute." Then she turned back to the group. My mother appeared with a tray of appetizers, beaming. "Maribel, honey, tell them about the Business Insider feature." "Well," my sister said, pretending to hesitate, "they did name us one of the top 20 startups to watch." My mother practically glowed. Our little genius. I drifted toward the kitchen where my father stood, talking with one of his colleagues. "Elena," he said, distracted but polite. "Good to see you." His colleague smiled. "Your father was just telling me about Maribel's company. Remarkable stuff." "Have you seen her pitch deck?" my father said proudly. "Brilliant." I nodded. Every conversation circled back to her. At dinner, my mother tapped her wine glass. She spoke about my father's dedication, his career, his sacrifices. Then her eyes landed on Maribel. "And speaking of achievements," she said, "I'm so grateful Maribel took time out of her impossibly busy schedule to be here. She reminds me so much of her father. That same brilliance, that same drive. She's everything we ever hoped for in a child." The room went silent. My father raised his glass. To Maribel. Everyone followed. I didn't. My mother dabbed her eyes theatrically. "Sometimes I think about how different our lives would have been if Maribel were our only child. Everything would have been simpler, more exceptional." My father nodded. "We wish your sister was our only child." Something inside me shattered. I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor. "Excuse me?" I said, my voice shaking. "Elena, sit down," my mother hissed. "Don't make a scene." "You just told an entire room you wish I didn't exist," I said. "And you're worried about a scene?" "That's not what we meant," my father said flatly. "It's exactly what you meant." I grabbed my purse. "Consider yourselves parents to 1 child. I'm done." "Don't be overdramatic," my father said. Maribel sighed. "You've always been so sensitive." I looked at her. Really looked. The satisfaction in her eyes told me everything. As I reached the door, my aunt caught my arm. "Elena," she whispered, "something isn't right. Your sister has been asking questions about your work, your accounts." She pressed a business card into my hand. "Call him if you need to." That night, I sat alone, staring at the card, knowing, deep down, that this wasn't over. It was just beginning. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my couch, fully dressed, the lights off, staring at the faint glow of the city through my living room windows. The business card my aunt had given me sat on the coffee table like a threat or a promise. I wasn't sure which yet. Detective Raymond Torres, Private Investigations. The kind of name you don't keep unless you expect to need it. By morning, the shock had hardened into something colder. Patterns. I built my career on them. Market behavior, consumer psychology, competitive intelligence. And suddenly, the last few months rearranged themselves into a shape I didn't like. Maribel's sudden success, her perfectly timed insights, her uncanny familiarity with strategies I hadn't shared publicly. At 9 a.m., I called my aunt. "I need names," I said. "Everyone Maribel talked to about me." There was a pause, then a sigh. "Your parents," she said immediately. "Your Uncle Gregory, and Elena, I didn't want to say this, but she had lunch with your executive assistant, Rachel." My stomach dropped. Rachel had been with me for 3 years. Smart, loyal, careful. "She told Rachel she wanted to surprise you," my aunt continued. "Asked about your biggest clients, your current campaigns." I thanked her and hung up, my hands already shaking. By 10, Rachel was sitting across from me in my office, pale and rigid. "We need to talk about Maribel," I said, closing the door. Rachel swallowed. I knew this day would come. She told me everything. How Maribel had reached out months ago, sounding warm, excited, sisterly. How she'd said she wanted to understand my work better. How she'd asked about the Lawson Corporation account, our biggest client, the one I'd built from the ground up. "I didn't give her files," Rachel said quickly. "I swear, but there was one thing." My chest tightened. She asked to use my computer, just 5 minutes. Said her laptop died. I was right there the whole time. I stood up. "Show me, now." We went through her system methodically, and then we found it. A hidden folder buried in her downloads, created on the exact day Maribel had visited. Inside were copies of every presentation I'd created for Lawson. Market analysis, demographic breakdowns, strategy decks, proprietary research. Rachel covered her mouth. "Oh my God." "It's not your fault," I said, forcing calm. "She manipulated you." But inside, something dark settled into place. This wasn't jealousy. This was theft. I copied everything to a flash drive and told Rachel not to mention the discovery to anyone. That afternoon, I drove straight to my parents' house. My mother opened the door, her smile brittle. "Elena, what a surprise." "We need to talk about Maribel," I said, pushing past her. My father looked up from his newspaper. "What business matter did Maribel come to you about 3 months ago?" I asked. My mother scoffed. "Your sister is building something transformative. Not everything is about you. Answer the question." They exchanged a look. Finally, my father said, "She needed information for market research." "What information?" "Your client list, your strategies." The room tilted. "You gave her my work," I said slowly. "She said she needed to study successful models," my mother said defensively. "You should be flattered." "Flattered?" My voice broke. "That's corporate espionage." "Don't be ridiculous," my father snapped. "Maribel would never." "She already did." My father stood. "Get out." I left shaking, drove straight to my company's legal department, and told Victoria Lambert, our general counsel, everything. Her expression darkened with every word. "Elena," she said carefully, "this is extremely serious. If her company is using your work, this is federal. Can we prove it? Only if we see her materials." That evening, I met my aunt at a coffee shop. She brought her laptop. She'd been watching Maribel's social media. "Look," she said, pulling up an investor deck. My breath caught. Slide after slide, my words, my data, my frameworks. "They're identical," I whispered. "And there's more," my aunt said gently. "She's been copying your LinkedIn posts, publishing them as her own insights." I called Victoria immediately. By midnight, we had a plan. I messaged Maribel, pretending I wanted to reconcile. She suggested meeting at her new office downtown. The next morning, I walked in with Victoria, a private investigator, and a court reporter. Maribel's smile faltered. "What's going on?" she asked. I placed the folder on her desk. "We need to talk about where your ideas came from." She laughed nervously. "You're being paranoid." Victoria spoke calmly. We have authenticated copies of Elena's work dated months before your company existed. Maribel's face drained of color. This is insane, she said. These are my ideas. Then explain the identical wording, I said. She stared at the documents. You wouldn't dare do this to family, she whispered. I leaned forward. The family that wished I didn't exist? Her voice cracked. I was jealous. You were always the capable one. And that justified stealing my career? She broke down then, offering equity, apologies, anything. I don't want your company, I said. I want accountability. 2 days later, the lawsuit hit the news. Maribel's investors fled. Her company collapsed. My phone rang endlessly. My parents screamed, begged, accused. I blocked them all. 3 weeks later, Maribel showed up at my apartment, hollow-eyed. I was drowning, she said. I wanted them to look at me the way they looked at you. I don't care why, I said. Goodbye. That night, they'd taken everything they could from me, and still, I was standing. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It seeped in. Through emails marked urgent, through calendar invites from legal teams, through the subtle shift in how people spoke to me, careful, respectful, aware that something serious was unfolding behind closed doors. Victoria wasted no time. By the morning after the lawsuit broke, my inbox was flooded with internal messages from executives, compliance officers, and HR. Not accusations, not doubts, support. Our CEO called me personally. Elena, he said, his voice firm, we're standing behind you. What happened to you is unacceptable, professionally and personally. I thanked him, but when the call ended, I sat staring at my screen, numb. Because as validating as it was to be believed, it didn't erase the truth that the people who should have protected me most had been the ones to open the door. Victoria and I met that afternoon in her office. Legal pads covered the table, evidence stacked neatly between us. This isn't just theft, she said. It's a coordinated effort. Your sister didn't act alone. I know, I replied quietly. She hesitated. Your parents' involvement complicates things. That's one word for it. Victoria slid a document toward me. We're going to subpoena everything. Emails, financial transfers, communication between your parents and Maribel. Once we do that, there's no going back. I thought of my mother's voice at the dinner table. We wish your sister was our only child. Do it, I said. The subpoenas went out the next morning. What came back was worse than I expected. Emails between my parents and Maribel discussing my work like inventory. Forwarded attachments labeled Elena_strategy_final. Messages rationalizing their behavior. She doesn't need it as much as you do. This will help you build something real. Elena will understand eventually. I stared at the screen, hands trembling. They hadn't just chosen Maribel. They decided I was expendable. David Sullivan, the investigator, uncovered even more. Maribel hadn't just copied my work. She'd actively sabotaged me. She contacted your competitors, David explained during our meeting. Claimed you were under investigation for plagiarism. One recorded a call. Defamation. Intentional harm. Calculated. The betrayal had layers. That night, my phone rang from an unknown number. I answered before I could stop myself. Elena, my mother said, already crying. How could you do this to your sister? I laughed, a short, hollow sound. How could I do this? She made a mistake, my father said sharply. You're destroying her future. She destroyed mine, I said, with your help. Silence. Drop the lawsuit, my father continued. We'll get her help. We'll fix this. Fix it. Like they hadn't already broken it beyond repair. I'm not fixing your mess, I said. I'm surviving it. I hung up. 2 days later, Maribel's legal team requested a meeting. Victoria raised an eyebrow. This means she's scared. The meeting took place in a neutral conference room downtown. Glass walls, cold lighting, no warmth anywhere. Maribel sat across from me, hands folded tightly, her confidence gone. Her lawyer spoke first. My client is willing to discuss a settlement. Maribel cut in. Elena, please. We can make this go away. You already tried that, I said. She looked down. I didn't mean for it to get so big. But it did, Victoria said evenly. And now there are consequences. Maribel's voice broke. You were always the golden one, the responsible one. They never worried about you. So you made me the villain, I said softly. She nodded, tears slipping down her face. I just wanted them to be proud of me. And now? I asked. She swallowed. Now I have nothing. I felt a flicker of something then. Not forgiveness. Grief. For the sister I thought I had. For the family I believed in. We're moving forward, Victoria said, standing. This conversation is over. Outside, the city hummed with life, indifferent to my personal apocalypse. Weeks passed. Depositions. Statements. Evidence logged and verified. The press moved on to the next scandal, but the legal machine kept grinding. One evening, after a 12-hour day, I sat alone in my apartment. Lights off, city glowing beyond the windows. For the first time since the party, I let myself cry. Not loudly, just silently. For the child who tried so hard. For the sister who never stood a chance. For the parents who chose wrong and never looked back. And when the tears stopped, something else took their place. Resolve. They had taken my work, my trust, my family. They would not take my future. The trial date was set, and for the first time since everything began, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. The morning of the confrontation arrived without ceremony. No dramatic skies, no ominous music. Just a gray Chicago dawn and a calendar reminder labeled 10 a.m., final meeting. I dressed carefully, not for intimidation, but for armor. A tailored black blazer, neutral makeup, hair pulled back tight. The version of myself that clients trusted with millions of dollars. The version my family had underestimated for years. Victoria met me in the lobby of Maribel's office building. Once we go in, she said quietly, there's no turning back. I know, I replied. We were joined by David Sullivan, our private investigator, and a court reporter carrying a slim black case. 4 of us stepped into the elevator together, ascending toward a confrontation that would permanently redraw the lines of my life. Maribel's office was everything I expected. Glass walls, polished concrete floors, expensive art that tried too hard to look meaningful. The kind of space designed to impress people who didn't ask too many questions. She was already there when we arrived. Maribel stood as soon as she saw us, her confident smile freezing halfway across her face when she realized she wasn't getting a private conversation. Elena, what is this? She asked. A discussion, I said evenly, about your business. Her eyes flicked to Victoria, then to David, then to the court reporter. You brought an audience, she said weakly. You brought stolen work to investors, Victoria replied calmly. This seemed fair. Maribel laughed too quickly. You're being dramatic again. I didn't respond. I placed the thick folder on the glass table between us. Explain this, I said. She reached for it instinctively. Don't touch the documents, Victoria said sharply. They're evidence. Maribel's hand froze midair. Inside the folder were side-by-side comparisons. Her pitch decks against my original presentations. My LinkedIn articles against her thought leadership posts. Timestamps, metadata, file histories, word for word, slide for slide, concept for concept. Her color drained. That's a coincidence, she stammered. David stepped forward. It's not. We traced the files back to the exact date you accessed Ms. Vasquez's assistant's computer. Maribel shot a look at me. Betrayal, anger, desperation colliding. You went this far? She hissed. You went farther, I replied. You tried to destroy my career. She slammed her hands on the table. I made it better. The words hung in the air. You stole my work, I said. And you're proud of it. Her voice shook now. Your work was good, but I made it great. Investors believed in me. They believed in a lie, Victoria said. Maribel turned to me, tears spilling over. Please, we're sisters. We can fix this. Fix it how? I asked. By pretending you didn't enjoy watching me be erased? Her face twisted. I didn't. You smirked, I said quietly, when they said they wished I didn't exist. Silence swallowed the room. Then she broke. I was jealous, she sobbed. You were always so capable. They never worried about you. I was always the disappointment. So you made me the enemy, I said. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. I just wanted to matter. Victoria closed the folder. This meeting is over. Maribel lunged forward suddenly, grabbing my arm. You can't do this to me, she cried. You'll ruin everything. David stepped between us instantly. Be careful. Assault would add another charge. Maribel recoiled, shaking with rage and fear. You think Mom and Dad will forgive you for this? She spat. I met her gaze. They already chose. We left without another word. 2 days later, the story broke. Rising tech star accused of massive corporate fraud. Investors pulled out within hours. Partnerships dissolved. The company shuttered by the end of the week. My parents called nonstop. How could you? She's your sister. You're tearing this family apart. I blocked their numbers one by one. 3 weeks later, Maribel appeared at my apartment. She looked smaller, hollowed out, wearing sweatpants and an old hoodie that smelled like stale regret. Elena, please, she said when I cracked the door. 5 minutes, I replied flatly. She told me everything. How she'd been failing long before the startup. How she couldn't finish anything. How stealing my work felt like the only way to stay afloat. For the first time, she said, crying, they looked at me the way they always looked at you. I felt nothing. I don't care why, I said. Goodbye, Maribel. The criminal case moved quickly. She pled guilty to avoid prison. 5 years probation, 800 hours community service, full restitution, over $2 million. The judge ordered public apologies to my company and affected clients. My parents didn't attend sentencing. According to my aunt, they'd moved to Arizona. Needed a fresh start. 6 months after the party, I sat in my aunt's kitchen, watching the sunset stain the sky pink and gold. How are you really doing? She asked. I'm okay, I said honestly. Better than okay. My company promoted me to vice president of strategic marketing. They stood by me through everything. I miss having parents, I admitted, but I don't miss who they became. My phone buzzed that night. Unknown number. Elena, it's Dad. Can we talk? I deleted it. Some bridges don't deserve rebuilding. And for the first time in my life, that truth didn't hurt. It felt like freedom. The silence that followed the sentencing felt heavier than the chaos that came before it. For months, my life had been measured in deadlines and court dates, depositions, statements, legal calls that started with just one more thing. When it ended, when Maribel stood before a judge and pled guilty, it was as if someone had turned off a machine I'd been bracing against for so long that I'd forgotten what stillness felt like. 5 years probation, 800 hours of community service, full restitution of everything she'd gained, over $2 million. The judge's voice had been calm, unemotional, final. Maribel didn't look at me during the sentencing. She stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, hands folded like she was holding herself together by force alone. I wondered, briefly, if she felt relieved, or if the weight of consequences had finally crushed whatever illusion she'd been living inside. My parents weren't there. According to my aunt, they'd moved to Scottsdale weeks earlier, sold the house, told neighbors they needed distance from the scandal. A fresh start. A fresh start seemed to be their solution to everything. Work became my anchor. My company had been unwavering, publicly supportive, privately protective. They'd issued statements defending my integrity, reassured clients, shut down rumors before they could grow teeth. When my promotion came through, it wasn't framed as consolation. It was earned. Vice President of Strategic Marketing. I stared at the letter for a long time before framing it. Not because of the title, but because of what it represented. I hadn't lost everything. I'd survived. Emotionally, though, the quiet was dangerous. Without constant motion, memories crept in. Small things. Childhood moments I hadn't thought about in years. My mother brushing Maribel's hair before school while I waited, forgotten, by the door. My father attending every one of Maribel's events while telling me he was sure I'd be fine on my own. I'd been fine. Too fine. One evening, 3 months after sentencing, my phone buzzed while I was cooking dinner. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Elena, please. It's Mom. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Then another came. We want to apologize properly. We made mistakes. Mistakes. I typed, deleted, typed again. Finally, I set the phone down and turned off the stove. My hands were shaking. I didn't owe them a response, but I did owe myself clarity. I met my aunt the next day for coffee. She studied my face the way she always had, quietly, attentively. They want to see you, she said gently. I know. And I don't think it would change anything. She nodded. Sometimes closure doesn't come from conversations. It comes from choosing not to reopen wounds. That night, there was a knock on my door. I didn't have to look through the peephole to know who it was. Maribel. She looked worse than the last time I'd seen her. Thinner, dark circles under her eyes, no makeup, no confidence left to perform. I just want 5 minutes, she said when I opened the door. I considered slamming it. Instead, I stepped aside. She didn't sit. She stood in the middle of my living room like a guest afraid of overstaying her welcome. I'm in therapy, she said quickly. Court ordered at first, but I kept going. I said nothing. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, she continued. I'm not asking for that. Then why are you here? I asked. She swallowed. Because I need you to know that I understand now what I did, what it cost you. I understood that months ago, I replied. I didn't, she said softly. Not really. I thought I was just borrowing, then lying, then fixing it later. I never thought about how it would feel to you. And now? Now I think about it all the time. Her voice cracked. I destroyed the one person who never tried to compete with me. I felt something then. Not forgiveness, but finality. Your apology doesn't change what you did, I said. It doesn't make us sisters again. She nodded, tears sliding down her face. I know. She turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, she said, her back still to me. You were always the better person. I just couldn't stand that it was true. When the door closed behind her, I sank onto the couch and stared at the wall for a long time. I didn't cry. I felt empty. And then, slowly, lighter. A month later, I signed a book deal. The proposal had started as a coping mechanism. Notes I'd written late at night about intellectual property, manipulation, and the strange way family loyalty can be weaponized. My editor called it raw, necessary. The title stuck immediately. Stolen Success, when family becomes the enemy. My parents found out through the press. They tried calling again. Different numbers, longer messages. We're so proud of you. We never meant to hurt you. Please don't tell the world our private business. I blocked every number. Some stories deserve daylight. The book launched in October. Reviews were strong. Invitations followed. Universities, conferences, corporate seminars. People didn't just want the story. They wanted the warning signs, the lessons, the permission to stop protecting people who were actively harming them. At a signing in Boston, a young woman approached me, tears trembling in her eyes. My brother stole my business plan last year, she said quietly. Everyone told me to forgive him because he's family. Your book gave me the courage to fight back. I won. That was the moment everything clicked. This wasn't just about me anymore. A year after the party, my aunt called. Your parents are getting divorced, she said gently. They asked if you'd meet with them. No, I said without hesitation. She sighed. I thought you'd say that. I looked around my apartment. The promotion letter on the wall, the advance copy of my book on the table, the life I'd rebuilt piece by piece. I didn't need their understanding. I didn't need their approval. I had something better. I had peace. The strangest thing about healing was how quiet it was. There was no dramatic finish line, no sudden rush of relief, just a slow, steady realization that the weight I'd been carrying for most of my life was no longer there. After the book launch, my schedule filled quickly. Speaking engagements, panel discussions, interviews that asked the same question in different ways. How could your own family do that to you? I always answered carefully. Because betrayal rarely looks like betrayal at first, I'd say. It looks like love mixed with entitlement. like loyalty used as leverage. People nodded, some took notes, others just sat very still, like something inside them had been named for the first time. My company threw a celebration dinner at a steakhouse downtown. Elegant but warm, the kind of place where deals were sealed and careers quietly advanced. My team was there. Victoria, David Sullivan, my aunt glowing with pride. Even Rachel came, having worked tirelessly behind the scenes to help untangle the damage Maribel had caused. To Elena, Victoria said, raising her glass, for her integrity, her courage, and her refusal to let injustice win. To Elena, the table echoed. I smiled, genuinely this time. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I stood by the window and watched the city lights flicker like distant stars. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Elena, it's Dad. Please, we just want to explain. I didn't feel anger or sadness, just certainty. I blocked the number. 2 months later, the hardcover edition of Stolen Success hit shelves nationwide. Sales exceeded projections. Foreign rights were negotiated. My publisher started talking about a second book, one focused less on betrayal and more on rebuilding after it. I considered the idea carefully, because rebuilding had become my specialty. On the anniversary of the party, the day my parents publicly wished me out of existence, I didn't mark it with grief. I took the day off work. I met my aunt for lunch. We laughed. We talked about ordinary things, the weather, her garden, a recipe she wanted to try. At one point, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I hope you know, she said softly, you didn't lose a family. You outgrew one. I swallowed past the lump in my throat. I think I finally understand that. That evening, as I drove home, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Elena, it's Maribel. I stared at the screen for a long moment before opening the message. I'm still in therapy, still working. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to become someone who would have deserved a sister like you, even if that day never comes. I read it twice, then I deleted it. Not out of spite, but because I didn't need it. Some wounds close, some scars remain, and some bridges, no matter how much time passes, aren't meant to be rebuilt. I was finally okay with that. A year after everything fell apart, I stood in my living room, surrounded by the life I'd rebuilt from the ashes. Career thriving, purpose clear, boundaries unbreakable. I didn't need my parents' approval. I didn't need my sister's apologies. I didn't need anyone to validate the truth I'd lived. I had already done the hardest thing. I chose myself. And in doing so, I gained something I'd never truly had before. Freedom.